Flip it. Perfect transition. I see it. Medic, hello. I see it.
Hello, mate.
I caught you mid-munching. I'm so proud of you.
You did, yeah.
Okay.
I was just copying an LPL caster, you know? And doing a munching I was doing.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Alright, I get it. I get it. First of all, welcome. Thank you for actually coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
You and I have been chatting about this for, I don't know, a couple of months, right? 3-4 months. And getting you on board this on the casting chamber. And I think it was in October, November, we tried to organize it. And then I know you're mid-casting at the time. I contacted you and I played around with some other guests as well. And then I finally got you here after 4 months. So it's been a long time coming, so I appreciate it. What are you dining on?
It's typical esports, right? Typical esports.
What are you munching on?
Well, I had like a big lunch, but then my girlfriend was on the way back from work and was like, do you want something from Burger King? And so I got a crispy chicken and a couple of fries and some nugs, you know?
Okay.
The traditional
That's good.
evening meal.
You know, in Australia, we have Burger King as well, but it's super rare. Like, it's its own independent chain. And the story is,
really?
The person who owns the name for Burger King wouldn't sell to the actual Burger King franchise. So now they're called Hungry Jacks.
Oh, I've heard of Hungry Jacks. Okay.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Same company, but yeah, they've just gone and run with it. So
right, in Europe you can't like a Big Mac can't they don't own the trademark for Big Mac, McDonald's.
Oh really?
So like because there was a company in Ireland, I think they were called Supermacs, who called things Big Macs, and then McDonald's was like, nah, fuck you. Sorry, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Nah, fuck you. We're just gonna do Big Macs.
Yeah.
And so now they were like, no, you can't. Europe was like, no, you can't have the rights. So I think a Burger King here was like the Big Mac but better, or the Big Mac but more like a Whopper. You know,
right?
It's quite funny.
Trademarks making money. Yeah, don't worry about it. We're informal here. For anyone tuning in for the first time, Casting Chamber is a series about how to cast, essentially, giving more resources to the community and giving more resources to either amateur, semi-professional casters, hell, even casters like myself. Looking back on this and using it as a resource is quite valuable. Getting a perspective from people in the field who've been in it for either a hell of a long time or have hit the top of their field as well. Someone like yourself who has been in such a high-ranking position. Let's just call it high-ranking position. Because I feel like you have so much experience. You've been around, like, you joined LEC, what, 2016, 2017?
End of 17, I was on Challenger Series, and then 18, I officially joined LEC. So.
Okay. Because I remember watching you join, and I remember being like, this guy's got a lot of charisma, a lot of energy. He knows the game well. And it's going to be along the lines of things I talked to you about today. I like to go through Foundation first and go through, like, the base of the role, because since we're doing play-by-play, we're sticking to the role. We're not going outside our realms. We're not talking about color casting, which is a whole different beast. And to intro us into your take today, like, if I sat you down here and we had new casters in who we do in the chat, welcome to everyone. If I told you to explain play-by-play, like, where would you start? Where would you actually start for, like, what this role is and what kind of casting is to you? Whether it's personal or maybe a fundamental take.
I mean, it's a difficult question, right? Because you could just do the basic of play-by-play is, at its essence, translating the action on the screen with added story, emotion, or thought behind it to the audience, right? Like, it comes from original radio casting, where it's like you need to describe what's happening to the audience because they can't see it. And then there's also, like, that's the basics of play-by-play and basics of casting generally. And then you have the extra level of, like, what actually is play-by-play and what is good play-by-play. And the idea is, well, is good play-by-play just being there to do the actual moment-by-moment action in a fight? Or should you be able to also converse with your color caster? Should you be adding in your own knowledge in the middle of a fight? Is that actually good play-by-play? And I mean, it's a debate that we have, at least at a high level, quite often, because you have a lot of different styles of play-by-play, right? You have Quickshot, who's very question and answer with his color casters, and that he will lead them places and he will add in a bit of narrative here and there, but he's not game knowledge at all. Like, his job is not to provide game knowledge to the cast.
Yep.
Then you have Dracos, who's very conversational, who will add some game knowledge, but more wants to show off his color caster by talking to them. And then you have people like Freak, who are incredibly heavy on the game knowledge and will enhance the cast with a very in-depth idea. And I think I sit probably between Dracos and Freak. I know a lot about certain things, but my play-by-play is predominantly, I want to show you what's happening, I want to add emotion to it, and then every now and again I want to give you a little bit of something you don't understand or something you don't know about the game that I've tried to bring down to, and this is going to sound bad, bring down to the average audience's level, right? Because the average audience, well, the average audience is gold, you know, fair. And that's no insult to most people, but like the assumption that a gold player can understand what's happening in a pro team's game if we talk about it at a pro level is spurious, to say the least. In the same way, a five-a-side football player won't be able to understand what's happening in a pro football game to the level that they do, at least, you know.
I think it's fair, because when I look at your play-by-play, and if I just look at your roots, like, it's obvious from your stream, and I think you streaming gives an insight into that, especially with how your high rank actually translates through to the game. When you talk about bottom lane, whether it's with Vedius or whether it's with another duo, you always give that insight into, like, oh, support matchups good like this, or, you know, like how bot lane interacts. Like, we can tell that you're more than, you know, someone like myself who will be like, you know, if I give support insights, it'll be like, Thresh Flay really good against Zenith Blade. And you're like, Rakan wants to do this at level 2 because how he interacts with this lane is unique to this situation.
Yeah, I get that, and I think like my level of knowledge, especially about Rakan, is higher than like the general expectation of play-by-play. But I also think when I started play-by-playing, I very much fell into the I'm a dumb play-by-play sort of stereotype, and it was Vedi who would say all the important things, and there was a degree of not lack of trust, but we hadn't established the trust where he would understand that I could take something and I could lead, and it would be okay, and we wouldn't get into muddy water. Because I think a lot of play-by-plays, especially in the past, and when they're starting out, will get themselves into hot water quite often. Because we like to say big things, and we like to sound, you know, grand, and you like to have these big battle moments or these big moments where you're like, oh, Cap's the best player in the history of esports. You know, we've all painted ourselves into a corner. And so it took a while for Vedi to understand that I could talk about bot lane without painting us both into a corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely lean on the analytical side of my knowledge from time to time.
And it's about what, you know, certain audience members will like that more than, you know, like my style of casting, where I lean on Lyric, you know, and I completely let him, you know, take the wheel. You know, and it's a very different interaction, very different duo. I think as well, like, we've come to accept that different styles over the years, different styles aren't better than others. It's opinion based. It's like, you know, your style works for some, my style works for some, you know, Freak style, quick shot style, like casting feels very opinionated. So this is an interesting answer, because when
it's entirely subjective, right? Like,
that's right.
You're never going to be able to like give us a hierarchy of exactly why, like what measure of narrative is better than what measure of play-by-play or like team fight casting or whatever, right? I also think like it's interesting we talk about this so much when all of the big casts are tricasts, and the generally accepted role of a play-by-play in a tricast is shut up until action happens and let your color casters talk, right? Like you get probably 3 or 4 words outside of a team fight, and the rest of the time it's just like, okay guys, you talk about game states and such, I'll just sit here and wait until I can shout good again, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, you know, some of the biggest casts come into that tricast, and I love this answer to open us up, because when I've asked other casters about, you know, defining the role of play-by-play, everyone has a different answer. Whether it's something to along the lines of like, you know, hey, we throw the ball up to spike it down, more like an old Frosker answer that she said when she was in OCE. I think Munchables said something similar to that. You know, Flowers went on down the path of something different entirely. It was a while ago, but I like that to start off. So moving on from like how we define the role as play-by-play, let's go more specifically into your play-by-play and how you would approach a broadcast. Maybe theory-wise or cast-wise, like how you would prep. Because if you're someone who is in that mid-range between Freak and Dracos, you said, and you do have some analytical style in there, How do you actually prepare for broadcast running into your standard LEC match, right? Nothing playoff wise, just your standard match. You're working with Vedius. What's your take to start that off?
I mean, are we preparing for those casts these days, Hysterics? I feel like you're
Oh,
probably at the level where do you actually need to put in that much work for that? And that's like no insult meant to those games, but honestly, like there are weeks where I'll do the meetings that we have. So we have like a story meeting, we
yep,
have our caster stats meetings, and I'll do those. We'll have an idea of the themes we want to present in a cast. So
yep,
if it's Astralis BDS, for example, you're like, okay, well, Astralis is struggling. Let's look at their early game a little bit. Let's look at BDS. Sinkoff seems to be doing okay, so we'll have a look at him. And then apart from like rewatching the VODs of the week, I wouldn't say I'm any longer, at least, deliberately planning how I'm going to approach a cast. And I think I used to do it a lot, and I think it is good for newer casters to do.
sure,
But the place I am and even for older casters, I don't want to say any caster that does this is like bad or whatever, right? But the way I invest my time now is I'm investing it in understanding the game more, and that's because I feel in a general cast, so not in a playoffs cast, so like not in a big cast, I can present narrative, team fights, and the general flow of a game well enough that the place that I get my largest gain is understanding the game more. So going through lore wiki and looking through interactions and playing the game a lot at a high
yeah,
level, right? And you said like even you've noticed, even you not as in slow or anything, just as like you have noticed during my games that I'm casting at a more analytical level. Like I'm adding in these little things as we go along and talking about bot matchups. So currently my casting prep is playing a lot of League of Legends and talking to a lot of people about how League of Legends works and what I generally would want to do in a situation and how I'd want to work around it. Now, in the past, I'd go through and I'd watch the VOD and I'd be like, okay, this is the tendency of this team and this is the player I want to look at. And bit by bit, I'd develop an idea of each team's, strengths and weaknesses. And then I'd be able to take that in probably with 5 to 10 salient points per team going into a cast. But right now, that's just not where I am in terms of prep.
yeah.
I will go into the theory aspect a little bit though. Something I've theorized a lot over the last couple of years, and I put it out on my Twitter as well, was this how a play-by-play casts idea, right? And it's like, what is a team fight? Are there layers to a team fight? What style of team fighting do I want to get into? Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And a couple of years ago, it was very much I want to cast from a war, a battle. Like League of Legends is a bunch of fights, so how do we cast it like a battle? And I moved away from that into like last year was much more rap god and much more saying everything I see on the screen. And now I've kind of moved into a how do I have only not big moments, not like the huge F off moments that you want to have, like the here comes the crow storm or Faker Shockwave finds them all. Like those moments you have to be ready for, but you can't plan.
Yep.
But how do I make each team fight, especially near the end of a game, feel more grand and feel more powerful? And part of that is slowing down and not being as eager to say everything I'm seeing, and rather being willing to not say stuff. So that's the theory behind my play-by-play at the moment.
It's interesting because that's kind of the direction, ironically enough, that I'm heading in as well. Like my month-to-month goal at the moment is, well, how do I slow fights down and give it that bang? You don't have to say everything. You don't have to. If you like rap god style, you can be a rap god. But I feel like there's limited casters in the scene right now, which is always the argument about being unique and doing your own style. But there's not many casters who will slow it down and bring in that big oomph moment. So
I think a lot of that comes off Flowers being so popular, right? I think
true.
Ever trying to emulate Flowers is always going to be difficult. But when you see someone at the top of their game who is getting plaudits, you're going to want to emulate them. And I think we all play-by-plays walked into the style that not only Flowers, but had been made popular via Flowers and via other people throughout the years.
Yep.
And now we're starting to see a bit more of a divergence from that. The issue always becomes like, this year I have very readily said to myself, I don't really care what assignments I get internationally. Like if I get a good MSI, cool. If I get a good Worlds, cool. But like, I just want to have a year that I enjoy casting again. But because the general audience sentiment is that Rap God is the style that we want to hear, and the production sentiment is that Rap God is the style we want to hear.
Oh, really?
If you don't do that, there's always the risk that you don't get big assignments. So if like there's always that balance, right? Of I want to be myself, but I know that the audience's ear thinks this is better than what I'm trying to do.
Ah, I didn't know that was a full sentiment all around, but yeah, like
I mean, I'd like okay, so it's the sentiment that I feel from the audience and generally, right?
okay.
But I couldn't, I haven't been told directly by a producer, Rap God is the only style that you can play by play cast in.
Yeah,
Mostly
yeah.
because it's rare that you actually get a producer directly understanding like the intricacies of the craft to that degree, I guess. So.
Yeah, which is very fair. I mean, they got other things to look
Oh,
at as well.
100%. Yeah, it's not their job, right? But
So many different
it's
directions.
always interesting when people make decisions when they're not actually like in the internal workings of how the ranking. Anyway, yeah,
So I want to come back quickly because at the start of this conversation, you started talking about how like your prep for the cast is different from someone who's an amateur semi-professional coming up to the league, and like I agree. Like I'm definitely not prepping like I was years and years ago. Like I'm not going in, writing down pages of notes. I've actually stopped doing notes into broadcasts altogether because I think for me, it's like, it's not valuable. And me remembering notes, it's like, well, I kind of talk to myself. Like I'll look back through previous casts because I want to fine tune aspects of the craft. So I think, again, another interesting perspective where it's not that stereotypical, like the harder the work, the harder you work, the luckier you get, which in overall is still, I think, true in everyday aspect. Yeah. But you're not just grinding out, writing pen to paper for 6 hours and going, yeah, that'll be valuable. Like working smarter, not harder, I think is a level 100%. You're definitely at the moment.
Yeah. I also, sort of my mantra for the year, and I haven't quite got the wording on this yet, but it's just like care less. Like I give less of a shit what people think of my casting. And obviously like there's certain people that I care if they think it's good or not, but both you and I, and just generally the majority of play-by-play casters, I think, especially in the tier 1s, are at a level where we know if we're casting well or not.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't tell you if I'm like 2% better than I was. Well, I probably could tell you if I was 2% better than I was last year, but like the intricacies of how I want to cast really are just out of the window now, and I just want to cast in a way that I enjoy casting, and people seem to like it when I do. Like I've been very jocular recently, and I made a fucking rapid fire gammon joke at one point in a cast, and people laughed at it, right? And yes, it's the start of the season, and so if I keep doing that through bigger games throughout the year, then things are going to change. But I would rather just enjoy myself and care less what other people think. And if someone that hires me tells me I need to be more serious, then I'll start being more serious.
Yeah, very fair.
Care less. That's kind of my mantra.
I mean, also, as entertainers, if we care about what everyone thinks, all the time, it can drive us mad. Like, I definitely had an opinion on, people talk to me on Twitter or Reddit, or even like looking at Twitch chat replay, and I'll be like, oh, that person said that, and I need to care. Like, it's not constructive criticism, but they didn't like me, so how can I improve that? It's like it drives you nuts.
Oh, it really does.
Oh god,
it really does.
Overthinking that stuff. So okay, so thank you for giving us the overall, like, general preparation for a cast as well, especially in your position. It's interesting to see that perspective when you are at that high tier level. World's absolutely, world's final quality caster. That's what.
That.
Well, no, it is also the truth, because you've been in the scene that long, that your strength is there. It's obvious. Before we get more into you as a caster, and before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about voice and how you warm it up, or how you prepare. Is this one different as well to what you'd do in the past? Like, theory wise is very different as you develop, but voice and getting it in the right state, I think is an important one to touch on as a play-by-play.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important, right? And we all have our different techniques. I think my vocal warm-up is a bit shorter than it used to be. It used to be about half an hour long. Now it's probably 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
But things like arpeggios that you can find on YouTube. I have a poem, Tarantula. Do you remember an In Miranda? Just like running through that. Some people do Rap God section of Eminem. Sometimes I do that as well if I'm feeling it.
Dagda does that.
Just general. Dagda does it.
Yeah, Dagda does it. He loves it.
The Irish Rap God. Amazing. But yeah, like just those general warm-ups. It's very easy to find a vocal warm-up guide, like a 5-minute vocal warm-up on YouTube. It's the sort of thing I'd recommend if you're just starting out. And then moving your mouth around, massaging your jaw, getting your tongue like around your mouth and pushing it. Because you have to, like, my tongue is probably the first thing to tire in a cast if it's long.
Yeah.
And people forget that it's a muscle, and you have to like keep it actually working. Otherwise, it will tire out around mid third game or so. For me, at least.
You're very enunciated, I've noticed as well. Like the way your pronunciation in a cast is very clean. Have you had any vocal training as well? Like, while we're on the subject.
Not specifically for my pronunciation. So I think that's just the English accent coming through. But I did have vocal training to try and get rid of my roticism.
Right.
Because I have a nasty hat where it's an English accent thing where we pronounce R's as W's sometimes. And like if you listen to the Houses of Parliament or any sort of Prime Minister's questions, it's just how English people talk. But European people don't like the fact that English people talk this way. So I worked quite hard to try and get rid of my roticism, but I still have it a little bit. So every now and again, I'll say Bowen or Towit. But like, obviously, it's not really something I can change too much. I've tried, and my elocution teacher just said, "Yep, that's an English thing. Unless we entirely change your accent, we're not going to be able to get rid of that." So I said, "Cool, that's fine."
Didn't notice because I again, it's the cleanliness of words that come out of your mouth during cast that I think is very noticeable. I think people could agree with that as well, and I know we have a couple of people in chat kind of commenting on it as well.
Oh, God.
So yeah, like it's something I'll continue to notice. Moving forward after voice, like how do you kind of progress, right? Like, so your vocal warm-ups last 15-20 minutes now, max. Anything like a playoff cast, and you can kind of include whether it's your preparation theory-wise and voice-wise. Does anything change with the playoff cast, or like a worlds cast, a finals cast? The bigger the event, how does that escalate?
Yeah, I think it's all about getting yourself in the right headspace, right? So I have a Spotify playlist that I know makes me feel good, and it's just songs that make me feel good, and it distracts me a bit from. I don't know if you can hear my cat.
A little bit. Very cute.
Kiki Vas. I have a playlist that I listen to that just has like bangers that I enjoy listening to. So I'll put that on for like 10-15 minutes before the game. Like, so it would be probably an hour beforehand. I'll start thinking about getting ready. I'll go through my notes. I'll talk to my co-cast and be like, hey, this is the things we want to cover. This is like the order of operations through the game. So our first graphic, we're looking at probably this. Our second one, this. Our third one, this. And obviously that changes if the game changes, but it's nice to have that sort of general idea of what you're going to talk about. And then I'll be like, oh, in draft, do you want to do anything specific? Especially if it's a tricast, be like, okay, you guys are going to talk predominantly during draft. Just give me a moment here and here so it doesn't sound like I'm basically not doing my job. And then half an hour to go, I will start my vocal warm-ups. 20 to 15 minutes to go, I'll listen to like 10 minutes of my playlist. And then, you're up at the caster desk, standing by your co-casters, probably separated by a screen still because stupid COVID. But after that point, like, I definitely still have nerves, but they're not as big as they were the first time I did any of those things. Yeah. But it still hits you a little bit, and you have to just remind yourself to keep that adrenaline under wraps. Especially
nerves are very good.
Yeah, I think it's great, like to have the adrenaline. I think it's bad if you don't harness it, because otherwise it just becomes, a lot of the time people just speak really quickly and they're just like, oh my god, here's the draft and I'm going to go through red side and here are the 15 story points I wanted to tell you in the first 3 minutes of the game, and we just shotgun all the knowledge out and then you like lose yourself. But if you can harness it and like build it, it's really strong, especially in arena casts. Actually, I think that's why I still look at my final LEC finals 2019 summer in Athens as my best cast ever, because although I probably wasn't as good a caster as I am now, that arena just like it pushed me so hard. It was so good.
Oh, it pulls you up so much. I miss, I only got to do a couple of casts in an arena for LPL in 2019 before COVID hit. So there's nothing quite like it. And you're right, it brings you up. You feel that energy and you do harness it. It's so much easier to harness whether you're a better or worse caster. Coming back to a couple of things you said. First one, you talked about talking with your co-caster. This is something that all the play-by-plays have come on before have said as well. I'm glad you bring it up once again, because talking to your co-caster is something people kind of forget. Like talking to, especially to your color caster, if there's any aspiring play-by-plays out there. If you don't talk to your color caster, you don't know what they want to say. You're going to throw them in the deep end, throw them under the bus, or you might not even enhance them at all, because at the end of the day, one of our jobs, or at least what I think one of our jobs is, to make them look even smarter than they already are.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think as well, like knowing where your co-caster wants to play is good.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, like, you can know their general storylines or their general points. Obviously, don't steal their points away from them if they have them. But secondly, I know if I talk with Vedi, he's best on mid lane or Akali or that sort of picks, right? If I talk with Cajal, pushing him on like why the teams are doing what they're doing is really good, because he knows like the pro mindset. From with Gulborg, we'll talk a lot about bot lane because he's like a master tier support main as well, right? So it like having that knowledge of where can I, if we have downtime or if we have space, where do I push my color caster without them drowning, it is really strong. And it's something Quickshot does really well, because whenever he leads someone, he leads them in such an open way that they can then take it in the direction they want to go. So
yeah, very true. And you know, with each different duo, that's right, there's different things they want to focus on. So communication is really important. Hey, on with our practical, what about your goals? What about how you know, kind of monitor your development? Because with the way you're speaking through this, I don't want to call it an interview, this little question and answer
chat, you know?
Yeah, this chat. You're at this point where you know, you're so micro aware to your developments as a caster, and you're so sorry, I saw your cat come through, very cute. What? Pause the question. What type of cat?
They're Sphinx cats. We have 2 of them, but they're my girlfriends, and we just moved in together. Let me see if I can grab them.
Oh, congrats! Guys, moving in together with your significant other, it's worth it. Oh my god.
Is Mika?
Mika. Cute. Cute.
And away we go.
Very cute.
Okay.
I tell you what, I dig the cat. I dig the cat.
They don't like being held too much. So.
Okay. So you just moved it. Congrats, by the way. I literally just did the same thing about a month ago. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
How's it going for you?
It's going very good. We don't have cats, but we have a piano. So.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you can stroke a piano. I'm pretty sure.
I think I can. Yeah. This is somewhat, but I forgot what I was asking. The cats were more important.
I think it was goals. I think we were talking about goals.
Oh, yes. So I wanted to get your understanding on goals, because if you're at that point where, you know, development is, you know, you're talking about relaxing, having fun, and just having a good casting year, not in the sense of necessarily quality or performance, but also enjoying it. So what do your goals look like for a year like this? Like, where are you up to in kind of your own development and how you monitor it?
So I think I used to be very... not strict on writing down goals. So I'd be like, okay, starting off the split, I'll give myself, you know, 4 weeks, and these are the goals I'm aiming for. And you'd be like, oh, well, I want 1 goal based on narrative development. I want 1 goal based on team fights. I want 1 goal based on, I know, connection with my co-casters. And then I'd review them every, you know, 4 weeks to 8 weeks and be like, okay, how are things going? Let me rewatch some VODs and see how things are working. Because this year I am looking more at just getting my cast to a position where I'm having fun. I'm actually not being that stringent on goals for myself. Now, like, obviously, I think there is a degree of, we're all very hypercritical of ourselves. This kind of comes with the territory. And if I see things slipping, if I feel that my casts aren't that good, then I will sit down with myself and be like, okay, well, you need to work on this and you need to buck up your ideas a little bit here, mate, because there are people gunning for your job. But I also think that, at least off the last couple of weeks of me casting for fun, the reception has been good in the sense that people seem to be enjoying it as well. So that was kind of my metric of success, where if other people didn't seem to be enjoying me just having fun on a cast, then I'd be like, okay, well, now you have to actually put some goals in place and work towards a justifiable end. Whereas because now I know people are enjoying what I'm doing, and people, like, at least they tell me they're enjoying what I'm doing, then the goal can just be to continue doing this until I find a point where something cracks in some way and I have to reevaluate.
I think from the one cast I've seen, because I haven't watched too much LEC,
Sure.
LPL's 7-day schedule again, but
it's all the fucking time.
all the time, dude. We never sleep.
I go to sleep, LPL's on. I wake up, LPL's on.
I know, dude. We had a 9-hour broadcast day, the one where Lyric yelled at TT. and yeah, literally
Yep,
lost
I remember that one.
his marbles. But
Yep.
again, from the from I think it was the one caster heard. I can't quote the game, but I just remember like it sounds like you're enjoying yourself more,
Yep.
and I think that that's always going to translate through to the audience because when the audience knows that you're having fun or enjoying yourself, and before I think I could say the same thing. You and MediVedi, that's why we attach to it so much because not only the sparkly intros, the fun intros, but you guys had great banter in game while having amazing casting too. It all came together and it was like we're having fun and we can join in with you. I think it's very infectious. And I can see that again this season that you're even having more fun and you feel like you're in a very comfortable state. So I think there's something to be said that like that is progress in and of itself because letting go as an entertainer when you know that you have such a strong baseline fundamental.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Is
Because I don't
growing.
think I would have done this. I don't think I would have been able to do it to the degree I am now, at least a few years ago, right? Like my jokes would have been too off the wall, or I wouldn't have been able to bring it back to game well enough, or my team fights wouldn't have been strong, so it just seems like a really loopy cast, right? And it was a complaint that Vedi and I had against us for a while, where a lot of the time when I wanted to inject humor, I'd do like off the wall things rather than League of Legends related things. And now I have so much trust in my fundamentals and as you say in my base that I can just experiment with my personality and experiment with, will the audience like this? Will they not like this? And sometimes you have a joke that doesn't land, and sometimes you have jokes that really land, and that's just part of the joy of casting League of Legends. I'm also lucky that I'm in a position where the LEC is all freelance, well, mostly freelancer based, so I don't have like direct input from my producers, but they trust me well enough to, when I tell them I'm caring less about casting, they don't seem to think that I should be fired. So that's always a good sign.
That's a very, very good sign. Well, you've done the miles. I mean, you deserve to have that trust in you as well. And before we go into your journey on the LEC and kind of how you got there, I have one more question that's a follow up. That's a direct fundamental question as well. We talked a little bit earlier about chatting to your co-casters and what play-by-play is to you. Let's talk more in the space of the duo and what your partnership is like in a cast where what you think your direct responsibility to your color caster is. Now, this can be an extension on what you think play-by-play is. This can be a completely different answer if you think that there is something that, especially amateur and semi-professional play-by-players, like what they think their responsibility should be within their duo environment.
So it's specifically responsibility to your co-caster.
Okay. Not just because I think responsibility to audience is kind of what lists under.
What is a play-by-play?
Yeah, but maybe more just within the realms of like your color caster.
I get that. I think the answer that most play-by-plays will say, and the one I think I agree with, is that you're there to elevate, right? Basically, you are partly showing off your color caster, but partly enhancing anything they say or like allowing the things they say to really shine. And that's co-cast. That's like just casting together generally. In the same way, I would expect a color caster to help me shine in team fights. Right? They give me a little bit of scene setting before we get into the fight. They interject when I'm running out of breath. Right? And my job is to make sure that they can really share their knowledge. I think there's also a degree of play-by-play should push their color caster because it is easy to, especially on just like normal casts, to be like surface level analysis as a color caster. And when I know Vedi knows more than he's letting on, I'll be like, oh yeah, here's this little thing you told me before, but I'm not going to tell the audience. Obviously, you've told me this in the past. And then he'll be like, well, now I have to dive deeper into this Akali Gwen matchup because you pushed me a little bit on it. And that is also like that in its essence, that is making your color caster shine. It's just sometimes they don't really want to shine as much as you want them to shine in the moment, right? So, yeah.
Okay, simple, but I also like pushing them a little bit because you're right. Like whether you're amateur or whether you're a worlds caster, I think not pushing them out so far outside their comfort zone that they have to talk about things they're not experiencing at all, and nothing you talked about pre-game, but being able to push them to the point where they are able to like, oh, well, this, I know you know this, and together we can shine.
And like sometimes they need the stop eating my burger, you cat. Sometimes they need the little like the push in the right direction. It's not that like they don't want to share the information, it's that maybe they haven't thought of it in the light that you've thought of it in. Or like when you reference back something they mentioned in draft, it's like, oh yeah, in draft you talked about how this poke comp always wants to get to position first, but the vision control is just so strong from this other composition. And then Vedi would be like, yeah, and because of that they've got all these cool, like sometimes you just need that little push to remind you of what you're building towards, you know.
All right, so let's go more into you, because I know. Well, I actually wrote down a lot of questions like specifically for you, because I remember like I think it was, I can't remember, again, you talked about starting LEC in 2018. I strangely enough, I went through interview for EU LCS, I think because it was when, what year was it? Did you do the same interview when, was it Pyro who left at the time to open up the spot?
Yeah, so I was doing Challenger Series. Actually, did Pyro leave in 18 into 19?
Did he? Well, no,
I
it
worked
was
with
Pulse.
Pyro for a while.
It was Pulse who left.
Pulse left,
and that was the position.
Yeah, I think I came in the year after Pulse left. Let me have a quick look at Gamepedia.
Oh yeah, that's right. Tracks Casters. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Very good resource. I'm gonna.
So 20 is a. Oh, you do that, mate. I'm sure people want to watch you eat that on cast.
This will be good buffer.
Casters. Wait, where is Casters? Is there not just a list of all the casters for it?
I thought normally at the very bottom there was.
Yeah, so did I, but I can't see it. Anyway. Oh, here we are. Vedius, Quickshot, Pyro. So Pyro was casting 2017 spring.
Okay.
And then did he leave in 2018 spring? Was it? No, I think it was me, Dracos, Quickshot, and Pyro for 2018 spring.
Because I think it must have been Pulse. Like it had to have been, because Pulse came and did LPL in. Well, Pulse was on LPL in 2018, so he couldn't have done EU LCS. And end of 2017, I think 2017 he might have done it in Australia as well, because 2018 is when the whole 7 of them moved to China. Sorry, 2018 is when that happened. 2017 is when they were doing it from studio. So like Tom Roma, Frostgren was there, I believe. Raz.
Yeah, I think Pulse left the year before I joined. So I think he left end of 2016.
Okay.
And then I think,
because I remember doing an interview with, I think, Quickshot and another member of the team when I was super young, super fresh. And it was for the position that Pulse left open. And then I don't know if that was timed with you and then you progressed on. I was so young. I was so like inexperienced at Sprout.
Baby.
Yeah. And I remember watching him being like, oh, that's the person who got the position, and being like, you know what? That's good. There is a big gap. There was a huge skill gap, because I could see straight away that, although nervous, obviously, is your first couple of casts, there was a lot better in the baseline fundamentals that I was trying to work towards. So I just remember at the same time kind of, watching you move into that main position. And again, you said, sorry, 2018 was your first split.
Yeah, well, so I did Challenger Series 2017 spring, and then summer, and then I did a couple of LEC casts in 2017 summer. I did Unicorns versus Splice, I think, because I had an opening monologue where I talked about the EU Zoo, something we got rid of for a while. But yeah, I did that with Deficio, I think, and I spent the whole cast calling Vizichachi Vizzy instead of Chachi. And I don't know why I did it. And I kept saying, oh, Vizzy in the top lane, he's doing stuff. It's like, no, my name is fucking Chachi Medic. I can't believe I did. Anyway, yeah.
But so that must have been very intimidating for you, and especially you talk about working with big names like Deficio was there. I think Crepo was there at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Crepo he left in 20. So I never cast with Crepo. He was there for 2017. But I only fully joined in 2018. I did like a couple of things in 2017.
So you cast with Deficio, which would have been a very big deal in the prime of his casting career as well, when he was doing so well with Quickshot. Actually, before we get into that, I want to take a step back. What actually led you to starting cast? Let's even go back. I want to go to the start. I should have started with this. Casting. What actually like put you into this path? Because before we talk about like actually getting to that prime position, When did you start casting?
Oh God. Second year, third year of university. So when I graduated 2015, so it would have been 2013,
Wow.
2012, somewhere around that.
Okay.
I was very drunk. And we were playing some
Good start.
5v5 scrims. Yeah, we were playing some 5v5
Yeah.
scrims, me and this group called Tactically Fabulous. And we had too many people. And I was like, well, I can stream from my PC, so why don't I just stream it and watch you guys and cast the game very drunk. It was, you know, it was fun. I really enjoyed myself. And then I listened back to it and it's like, oh, it's quite fun. Saw on Reddit that European Gaming League was looking for casters for their like weekly tournament. It was one of those like plat and diamond tournament things, and
Yeah.
I applied to it and got partnered up with Excoundrel actually.
Oh.
And then Excoundrel and I just started doing all the UK events, and I think we got lucky because when we were starting out, Pulse and Stress were just moving up into LEC positions or EU LCS positions,
Right.
and so they were like the UK casters. They then left, and Excoundrel and I were just like, well, we're both from the UK. Do you want to hire us?
Nice.
And yeah, we did a bunch of events together.
Right
So like
place, right time.
Insomnias, yeah, pretty much, you know. And like sometimes you need that
Very
to give you a kick in these sorts of situations, especially since like in those days there weren't the ERLs and they weren't all of these like established casting routes to like really step up into a position. Did LPL English casting even exist as a format back then?
Not even
Like
sure.
maybe, but nowhere near like the official stuff we have now.
Yeah.
So you in those days at least you really needed something just to give you that little kick up the backside, because otherwise it was quite easy to never get a job. And like I was reaching out to people and be like, hey, I see you have a League of Legends tournament. Do you need some casters? I'll work for food stamps and just a hotel room for the weekend, you know? So
Classic. The usual. So sorry, I interrupted when you were saying you're casting things like Insomnia and you were casting multiple games. How many years did you kind of jump between games and represent as a UK casters before your first kind of like big gig, whether it was an event or something that you realized was a step up from the regular stuff you were doing with mainly Excoundrel?
So I did Four Nations for Riot, which is like their UK, Ireland, Wales, and Scotland event, and that was DreamHack 2014. I want to say it might be 2013. It's all around that sort of time, like it's anywhere between 2012 and 2015. I was doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I did that, and then I actually was going to retire because I was in fourth year of med school. And I said to myself, look, I can either focus on being a doctor or I can focus on casting. And I had applied to a Riot position, an LEC position, in third year med school, and had said, I'd interviewed, and basically Trevor had said, things are going pretty well. And then I withdrew my application because I wanted to finish med school.
Yeah.
And so got into fourth year, did this Four Nations thing, was like, okay, this is my last ever League of Legends event. I'm quitting after this. I'm going to retire as a caster.
Wow.
Just going to be a doctor, yeah. And then for a year, I was just a doctor. I played some computer games, did some small events, but nothing major. I was just a med student. And then I graduated and moved on and decided that I wasn't enjoying being a doctor and I'd prefer to start casting again. So I did like Vainglory events and I did some League of Legends stuff and applied again to Riot and got turned away by Quickshot saying you need another year to develop. And then third time was the charm.
Wow.
Yeah, all the way in 2017.
I knew you were qualified. I knew you had is it doctorate? Am I?
I did an MBBS, so Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery.
So I knew you were qualified, but I didn't know you actually spent a year away from casting, like completely separated, going, oh, well, I want to finish this, and then you decided to go into the field for a year.
Yeah, I worked that the year I retired from casting was actually the year before I graduated. So it was all my finals and everything were in that year, which is kind of the reason I said I don't want to cast, because if I'm in two minds, then I'm not going to be able to focus on actually, getting my degree.
How long?
And then
did
I
the
worked for a year.
Degree take to
5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
It makes sense that you want to finish it as well.
Yeah.
So, can you technically put doctor in front of your name or not? That's what
I'm Dr. Aaron Chamberlain.
Okay, that's awesome. That's worth it. That's whenever they do like a full lower third, full name lower third.
Yeah, I should ask just to be doctor every time.
You don't need to ask. You're a doctor. You tell them. You tell them. Put doctor in front of the name. I think it's more funny that, like, you know, if there was ever any issues on site, like a live event, even if you were casting, you know, someone in the audience fainted or whatever. If they ever said, "Is there a doctor?" and, you know, the cast stopped and the players stopped.
We need a medic, basically.
We need a medic.
Oh, sweet.
And then you run.
It's as if the name has a specific meaning.
Yeah. Was that the primary, like, it's quite obvious, but was that the primary cause, like calling yourself medic? And did you create the casting name after you finished your qualification, or was that before?
So casting name actually only happened after I got hired by Riot to do Challenger Series, because they said I used to be called Sona. So I used to be called the Only Sona.
Wow.
And they said you can't be called the Only Sona if you're going to be a Riot caster, because obviously. So I had to think of a new name. Originally it was the Doc, and then that really didn't come off the tongue very well. So we moved to Medic. But my true gaming name is CrackFox91. So one of these days, CrackFox is going to make a comeback.
Yeah, I wonder why you call yourself CrackFox. That's kind of like, I don't know if you've heard. I think it's Atlas and Rusty who have pretty egregious names. Rusty was Rusty Ballbags, which I don't think as a top laner for Legacy Esports, I think had to change it. And then
I remember him.
And then Atlas was Slappy Baggins? No.
Yeah, I think it was Slappy Baggins.
Yeah.
Because his Steam name's still the same, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. Or an Egym. And people in the chat bringing up Egym. Erect Gymnast is the full name of
Good
that.
name. Good name. That's a solid name right there.
Yeah. I was called Milkshake Jake before they made me change it. They said it wasn't appropriate. And I was kind of confused as to why. I wouldn't have changed it.
Well, because what if you're sponsored by a non-milkshake company? Huh?
That's true.
What if Slushy sponsors you and you're like, hey, I'm Milkshake Jake, bringing you the slushy Red Bull Baron play of 2018.
That's true. Any other drink company be like, no, we don't want that name. That's smart.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like it's you've had such a career behind your career. Have you ever thought about one day going back into the medical field, or, you know, hanging it up?
Yeah. I mean, I do miss it, right? But also, like, to go back now, I'd basically have to redo med school, because you have to prove to them that you actually know what the fuck you're talking about again, right? And I'd have to redo a bunch of exams and such. And then, like, I think I could do it with a bit of study, but there's also, like, I left it because emotionally I empathized too much with my patients, and so I could never leave, like, the emotions at the door. And I'm not sure, like, I've moved away from that. I think I'm a much more cynical human being now, but if that's what you want out of your doctor, then perhaps you're looking for the wrong sort of doctors. So.
Okay, well,
I did actually get my license back. So in the UK, if you're not working, you have a license to practice, and you can be registered on the General Medical Council register, right? So I was registered without a license, basically saying, yes, I'm a doctor, but I can't practice in the UK. Right. And then during COVID, they emailed me and were like, hey, we've given you back your license. You can be a doctor again now because COVID exists.
Okay.
And so I did. I had a moral dilemma of, like, do I go back and work as a doctor in the UK, basically doing, you know, dog's body jobs as a doctor because of COVID? And I messaged my friends and like, yeah, you'd be helpful and all, but we don't really need junior doctors. We need, you know, respiratory consultants, people that really understand the disease to come back. So I ended up not going. But there was a time 2 years ago when I was going to take a break from the LEC to go back and take some bloods and get coughed on, you know. So.
Well, very noble. I mean, that's how we know you have good
is it noble if you don't do it, though?
Well, you had the thought. That's where the nobility starts, for sure.
Yeah, I guess so.
I do think that's really noble. I know we sidetracked a little bit here, and we're talking about your progress. Before we,
can I ask for something quickly?
Of course you can.
Can you? I see that my lower third on the casting chamber screen says medic. Is there any chance you could put doctor before that? Because I've been told now I have to.
Sorry,
I have to have doctor on it all the time.
Yeah, dude. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Hey, how about doctor? Is Doctor Medic fine?
Yeah, Doctor Medic's cool.
Good. Good. It's even I emboldened you and made you a tiny bit bigger in font because you're more important.
Thank you. It's
Okay.
very important to me.
There we go. I hope that in future I'll make sure everything says doctor, all right? If
Yep.
we
Yep.
bring you back on for another. What was your work in the year? You said, you did work for a year. Is that correct? Like
Mhm.
what was your
Yep.
work actually doing in that year off? Or was it
I,
casting work you're talking about?
oh no, I retired from casting.
Yep.
I did my exams, then I worked as a doctor for a year doing respiratory medicine, so lungs, coughs, colds, all that jazz. General surgery, so lots of livers, kidney,
Wow.
not so much kidneys, like livers, gallbladders, etc. And then urology, so lots of penises, lots of urethras, cystoscopes, fucking cool things. It's where you put a tube with a camera on it up into the bladder.
Right.
Really fucking cool.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So hang on,
yeah.
urologists also do kidneys, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
kidney stones.
Okay.
Very fun to take apart.
Oh, okay.
You like shatter them. Oh,
Oh god.
it's really cool. It's really cool. I love medicine. It's super cool.
Yeah.
And I whenever I talk to people about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, this terrifying thing happened, and we had to, there were all these broken bones, and this person shoved a tube up somewhere and cracked my skull." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. That sounds amazing."
Wow. Want to take a
It's
close
so
look.
gross.
And
Yeah.
then you came back. So you said it
Mhm.
wasn't for you, or at least for the time being. You came back to
Yeah.
casting. Now walk me up to the point where you got LEC because you got Challenger Series. Now, was that you searching out for it, or did Riot reach back out to you? Like, what was the transition
So
there?
I during my year as a doctor, I did a bit of vainglory work.
Yep.
And they offered me something called Evil 8, which was like their seasonal based tournament. And I was like, well, this is enough money for me to like live off for the year.
Right.
So I took that. Then I applied to Quickshot and was like, hey, I'd like to be on LEC or EULCS at the time. What do I have to do to make this happen? He's like, okay, well, here are the things you need to improve over the year. So I did that, and then got onto Challenger Series the next year, and
right.
did that for a year. And moved
Vainglory was
into
with Munchables,
everything.
wasn't it?
Munch. So
Or
I
was it
think Munch and I
Legion?
weren't there at the same time. Maybe we
Oh.
were. Me, Ex Scoundrel. Was Munch there? Oh yeah, it was Munch and Action Jackson. Action Jackson.
I've heard that name talked about him.
Yeah, it was a great casting duo. We had a really cool group of us. Humanist, Action
Wow.
Jackson, not humanoid.
No.
Yeah,
Humanist.
it's a cool bunch of kids. Tasty Bacon, who is one of our dudes as
These
well.
casting names. God.
Best names in the biz.
Sorry, someone in chat just said Hannah is so confused right now. Your partner, cat or partner? If you don't mind me
So
asking.
Hannah isn't her actual name.
Okay. Well,
Her Twitch name starts with Hannah, but yeah,
Right.
she's currently in the bathroom being followed by the cats.
I was gonna say, interesting. My partner is called Hannah, so
Okay, my sister's called Hannah, so
we're
she's
immediately
married and
bonded.
lives in Wales, so who knows?
It could be the same person who somehow comes to Australia, like that every afternoon after work. So, hey, as we're kind of rounding this out, like you said, third time's a charm. You got LEC. We talked about you joining LEC. You got to cast with Deficio. Now let's come back to the point where I kind of started out. Your feelings about starting out, like, how you kind of got into the league, and also maybe reiterate on what you think got you over the line for getting LEC in the first place. Like, what made you so appealing to them to push you into that position?
I mean, apart from the fact that I'm a god gamer and incredible caster.
Yeah, apart from that. Very humble.
I'm white, I'm male, I have an English voice.
Good. You got it all. You got it all.
Yeah, I got everything you needed to be
That's
part
what
of the
you need.
casting team at the time.
Okay.
No, so like I think there's a degree of confidence that I have that definitely played well. Also, a lot of it was you okay. My willingness to take feedback and to learn.
Yeah.
It's something that people don't always think about too readily, but a humbleness in understanding that you don't know everything. I remember like Crepo Mitch took me aside one day and was like, "Hey, you're a really good caster, but everything you do is an 11. And what happens when you do get an LEC final? What happens when you do get a playoff game? Like if everything's an 11, where do you go then?"
True.
And like some of the advice I got then was actually some of the best advice I've got as a caster. So just a willingness to sit and listen and absorb, and then something I've always tried to do is like I will not be the first to speak in a meeting a lot of the time. I'll sit there and I'll listen, and then when I've formed an opinion, I'll say something instead of trying to be the first to speak and be the first person to have their say, which I think often people do without actually taking the time to consider what they're going to say. And that helps in interviews as well. Like, and people respect you more if you say, let me take a second to think about that, than just go, well, here's my immediate word vomit answer that actually makes minimal sense.
So you kind of respected the environment you were in. Like, you respected the environment you were in. You also respected, I guess, your elders in this instance, right? Where
you respect people that have more experience than you.
Yeah, and taking in what they say while, also trying to learn from them at the same time. I think there's a lot of elegancy in that because, joining a team, like, I think I was very similar when I joined the team with Raz and Clement. And, being the new play-by-play. There was only 4 of us when they were a 7-man team. They went through everything in China, and they went through the ringer of, like, not only dealing with so many different effects, but also, casting with so many different people. So I think, respecting that environment and the experience is something that is really, really important. Kind of being humble to the new environment you're in. So we talked a little bit about team environment, and we talked about your interviews as well. Let's go a bit further once you've settled in a bit and once you started casting. When was your first international event? When was it? First
2017 Worlds.
Okay.
I did my first. I actually did international before I was fully hired as a Riot caster.
Yeah.
And then I didn't do the next Worlds because MSI 2018 happened, and I made a slight mistake in one of my casts.
Okay, it happens. It happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
It happens. It was a very could have happened. Could have happened to anyone.
me and Rusty.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, dude. I've said controversial things on cast as well, honestly. Again,
I mean, it happens to all of us, right? And it's a mistake that I wouldn't make again, right? But it's just one of those things.
That's right. So, from your international event, let's ignore MSI. Let's talk about Worlds, your first Worlds. We've already mentioned preparation. Let's be more specific to your feelings going into it and how your first Worlds was for you, because it's a totally different playing field. There's a lot more prep in terms of knowing teams and knowing different regions. What was your direction towards this one, towards the first Worlds you've ever done?
I mean, I think it's the same as any Worlds you ever do, right? Like, you make sure that you have as wide a knowledge base as possible, and it's very difficult to do because there's 24 different teams. If you do play-ins into groups, 24 different possible teams that you have to know about. Yeah, and it's massive. And you have 4 major regions, 5 at the time when I started, plus however many teams from all of these other regions. And there is always a risk that when you approach a team or a region that you don't have too much knowledge about, that you insult them in some way, right? And that's never the intention, right? Even things like pronunciation, like the amount of years it took us as a caster team to get ananasic right, and even now, like, whenever I pronounce it, people are like, you're pronouncing it wrong, you're not putting the emphasis on the na, and it's like, yeah, but there's only so much I can do. However, it takes a while to get to that point where you realize there's only so much you can do. And when I was starting out, I would try and over prepare. I'd try and watch all of the playoffs of all of the teams that I was casting and like understand everything that was happening about them. I have all of these micro things that I wanted to talk about, and I actually feel that did me a disservice coming into international events, because although my casting was good, I had so much on my brain that I didn't just talk about the game, and I didn't just present a game of League of Legends. Instead, I was trying too hard to get in all of these narratives and all of these stories. So now I will watch the teams, and I'll make I have a note document for every team that I casted at an international event, but I won't try as hard to know specifically that, I don't know, BRTT played Vayne against this team and got 2 pentakills across the course of 2017, and now when he picks Vayne, it's specifically a Rakan counterpick or something. Because as much as that knowledge is great, you can't expect an international or an English-based broadcast to have that knowledge about a CBLOL player.
For one player, all that
Exactly,
information on
right?
your brain, and
Yeah.
then you've got 100 and something
You have
else.
you have like 120 players that you're meant to know this about, plus subs, plus everything else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think presenting the games as games of league rather than trying really hard to cater to the fan, especially actually a big thing that people forget is the people that watch CBLOL and watch those like Brazilian league, or people that watch LLA league, or the people that watch Japanese league are likely going to be watching the language of their region.
True.
So as much as like I can have these cool little stories about players, it's not as much my job to make BRTT seem like the biggest thing in Brazil. I can tell you that he is, but I'm not there to do what his region's casters should be doing for him, right? I'm there to try and give you a game of League of Legends that will be entertaining and celebrate people that do well and criticize people that do poorly, right?
Yeah.
So.
I think there's a certain aspect of living in the moment in a cast that can't be understated, where, narrative is important, telling stories, and, if you have to sell players, sure. But living in the moment of the cast, like what's happening, because new narratives are created. And what actually happens in the game is what people are watching, right? And if you live so far outside of the game, then people are going to feel like, well, there's no story developing. We're living in the past, and there's nothing here that's being created that's adding to that. Is I guess my 2 cents. So I
agree.
I remember your first Worlds cast being solid. I remember there being a lot of really good feedback.
I think I was very fortunate that none of my initial reception was poor. Like I think even coming into LEC, people seem to really like me. Worlds, people seem to really like me. And I think that I was fortunate that just generally my voice and my demeanor seemed to come off well. Since then, obviously, there have been struggles, and there always will be, right? Like narrative-itis, etc. People disagreeing with decisions you make in the moment of a cast, and not understanding that sometimes you have 3 seconds to think of a line instead of 5 minutes to evaluate the line afterwards. Is an interesting one, but it's just part of being a play-by-play.
So what about what about your relationship with Vedius? Because
I hate him. He's a dickhead.
That's fair enough.
I thought so.
That's good. I'm glad we summarized that. How did you two become a duo? Because when people think of you, a lot of the time, or they think about you in a casting environment, they think MediVedi. Like it's very catchy. It is a favorite duo of many. And I think duos can be really, really powerful. I think MediVedi has that power to it that a lot of people want out of their own casting duos. So was that something the studio put you guys together and said, make this happen? Is it something you guys saw and ran with? Like, how did you begin on the trail of one of the best duos in League of Legends esports?
Firstly, thank you for that. Secondly, Vedi would say that thanks. Vedi would say he created us, that he always wanted us to be a duo, which I disagree with. I think there was a combination of Quickshot to Fisher was a thing, and I was coming in. It's like, well, who are we going to pair Medic with? Well, Vedi's free. We used to do a lot more rotation than we do now. We're a little bit more rigid on like these are your duos.
Yep.
These days, but I kind of fell into the MediVedi, Dracos Frosk, and Quickshot plus whoever was around at the time sort of hat. I think that it was interesting because we had a lot of issues and there was a lot of trust difficulties between the two of us, where Vedi wouldn't trust me to lead as much, and I wouldn't trust him to give me space as much, and so it was always a little bit of a challenge. Sorry, my cat's being
it adds to the atmosphere. It's okay. They were fighting each other before. They had a bit of a a bit of a play behind you. Yeah.
It was always a bit of a challenge, and I think that the biggest hurdle we've managed to slowly overcome was this sort of connection of being willing to let the other one take us where they want to go, and also being willing to follow. Because as much as I could say to you, say we were casting together, like, yeah, Hysterics, you can make whatever jokes you want. If I'm not then following with your jokes, it sounds really bad. Even if I'm like allowing you to do what you want, if I'm not then bouncing, if I'm not conversing, if I'm not laughing, sometimes we fake laughter on the desk just to make it seem like there's a little bit more of a connection than perhaps there is at times. So that willingness to just follow each other and to be on the same page, I think, has really allowed us to shine. I actually think we're casting I think 2019 was probably our best,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we're probably casting better than that right now. Like our best, like if you look over the course of an entire split. But I think MediVedi right now is in a really good spot. The issue is it's always a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes Vedi thinks he's really lacking on analysis, and especially with K-Draw in the league, there's a different bar for analysis than there was, or a different style of analysis than there was a few years ago. Sometimes I think, my team fights aren't as strong as they were, but it's just a very different style. So you're always like trying to work out this ebb and flow, and as a duo, it's a little give, a little take,
Yeah.
and like working out exactly where you wanna play.
Do you spend a bit of time outside of league as well, like not just chatting about work, but do you game? Do you go out for food, or like is that something that influences the duo?
Yeah, we used to a lot. We used to live together, so that definitely helped. Like we spent a
Oh,
lot of time
that's when it
together
went
for
really
like 2 years.
downhill, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Like
living
because he just
together.
hated me. No one ever cleaned the bins.
Oh man, that's when it
Yeah,
fell
but yeah,
apart.
that definitely helped. And then
Yeah.
over the last 2 years, we haven't spent as much time together. Just COVID exists, but we played a ton of New World together, and we played Valheim, and like we still game together from time to time.
Mm.
So I think the goal is always to spend a bit of time at least with your co-casters, and they're all my mates, so it's quite an easy thing to do. Next up, we have Lost Ark, so we're gonna grind some Lost Ark together. That's the plan.
Sounds good. Do you think it influences your other duos? Like if you work with people like Gilborg or any other color casters who are there's a lot of guests coming on. I don't know schedule. I know that I think Dagged is
There are a lot of guests. I agree.
going to be with Penguin from my understanding, and so on and so forth. So do you think that rapport you have with Vedius gives you a better insight into working with other color casters?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think specifically with Vedius. I think like with whatever color caster I develop that rapport with would help me understand how to develop rapport with other color casters, right?
Yeah.
It's like something Quickshot does very well as well, is understanding how to work with someone. But for me, like Goldberg and we're not friends, but we're not good friends, but we're like close enough that we understand each other, and we speak a similar language in the way that we understand League of Legends, which makes it pretty easy as well. And coming into those casts, it's like, okay, well, we know we're close enough to have conversations, but you need to. It's almost that you have to show the audience that you're friends, which I think a lot of people overlook. Because if I came into watching a show and I didn't know that Munch and you are friends and you're casting together, obviously you wouldn't be, but it's just picking an example, right? And then you banter with each other. I'm like, oh, this over the microphone, banter actually sounds quite aggressive. Yeah. I don't think it actually is, and I don't think you'd ever be aggressive to one of your co-casters, right? But banter can really sound like you're in a bit of a fight. And so with Goldborg, I was like, we both like to banter, but we're actually never going to do that on cast.
Yeah.
Because people don't know we're friends. Whereas with Vedi, I've worked with this guy for 4 years. Everyone knows MediVedi for life, etc. He knows we're good mates. So if I banter with him, no one thinks I'm actually being aggressive towards him. So I think that's actually a big thing that a lot of people overlook when it comes to rapport is you have to assume the audience doesn't know how good friends you are, or can't see you, which they can't, and so you have to be a little bit more apprehensive with the more sly dig humor and just go for the funny puns about pig guns.
Yeah.
What easier.
I think some of the stuff we've talked about today, like talking to your color caster, understanding what your role is between them, or having a better connection with them, better understanding, helps with stuff like that as well. You feel more comfortable because you know how they are as a person. You've talked to them before, and I think for any amateur or semi-professional caster, like it's talking to the other half of your duo that is something that often goes amiss. So
yeah, I think it's very important.
Before I ask you the last question, on that note as well, to any kind of amateur or semi-professional casters, what do you think is like the biggest focus out of what we've talked about today? Whether it is like understanding your duo or developing that rapport, what do you think is kind of lacking from any new casters you see in the scene? And this is such a broad question. This could go any direction. It's so general, it's crazy. Like, it's literally got 5 stars on its coat. Tell me, like, what do you think people you've seen that the people are suffering with?
Okay. Oh god.
Super general.
Yeah, I mean that's like.
Or you could tell me the most important thing.
Right.
You can tell me the most important thing that you think, like, to start their ground, in a strong space from what you've seen in the past.
I think there's always going to be a degree of what do I see in myself that I think is the biggest thing that I've learned that people can like see in themselves initially. I'm gonna say give less of a shit, and I know that sounds strange,
I like that.
but even for newer casters, I think there's a degree of you are trying to go through the hoops you expect you're meant to go through, and you're trying to cast in a way that you expect you're meant to cast, and you're trying to do things in a way you expect you're meant to do. And there are reasons that we do things the way we do, and there are reasons that there's specific setups, and that we do check-ins and we look at the scoreboard and we say certain things in certain ways. But the more you give a shit about what people say about you, the less likely you are to bring something unique to the space. Because you're going to do what a lot of play-by-plays did last year and what I did last year, which is try and copy the best. And that's okay. But if you only give a shit about being like the best, you're never going to be you. And if you only try and copy the best, unless you're really fucking good, you're never going to be better than the best. Because they're the best for a reason. So my suggestion to any new casters would be, yes, take feedback. Yes, think about things. Yes, understand why casting is done the way it's done, but give less of a shit about being as strict on yourself as perhaps casters were in the past.
Thank you. Sorry for giving such a broad question. I just felt like
okay, allow me to say give less of a shit a few times. That's always nice.
no, but it's also true, and I respect that answer because it's not something that a lot of casters will say forward because amateurs and semi-professionals sometimes they get told that you need to do this, you need to go down this specific path, and I like to my broad question, you give me a broad give less of a shit, which is important.
Just like I will stress, I'm not saying ignore what your producer tells you.
Of course not.
I'm saying ignore what Reddit tells you. Perhaps Reddit can go fuck themselves.
So as we kind of round this out, I've got one question, then we're going to take some audience questions. I've got a couple stocked up here. Do you think, or where do you think League of Legends Esports is heading from a casting perspective or elsewhere? Like, what do you think of the game? Are we going to be around forever? Is casting going to be a thing now? Is it just like a permanent fixture as career? League of Legends is an esport? I thought I'd finish with another broad question.
It's a broad question, not entirely in my wheelhouse as well, isn't it? Hysterics.
You can have a guess.
Talk about the business economics of League of Legends and whether or not it's going to be profitable for the next 10 years. I think I think it should be around for a while, right? Like every time we hear that League is dying, it has another crazy year where everything grows. And even if League itself isn't around for forever, I think casting will be, because casting has been around forever. Like the Olympics, I'm sure, had commentary and when they were originally made, and football's had commentary for the last few hundred years, and every sport in the world has commentary, right? And that's in its essence is casting. I think that I wonder if it will develop, and I wonder how it will develop, because I often look to other sports and try and find inspiration, and I never think League, or at least esports casting generally, will fall into the same place that football or NFL commentary has, which is a lot more spaces and a lot more dead air and a lot less time specifically calling the action. Although I do wonder if we'll ever get there, because like at some point, even with like something like League of Legends, where things adapt and change relatively often, at some point you have to assume a base knowledge of your audience. So I wonder if there'll be more times where it's just like, okay, well, we all know what's happening. We don't really need to talk about that. We can just like bounce and bounce and bounce and talk about something else.
Sure.
But maybe because of the rapidity of change, we'll never see League casting at least fall into that sort of niche. I think I'd like it though, because it means I get to say less and still get paid the same.
Yeah.
So per word, my dollar value goes up.
I mean, if it was something like the tennis, the action happens and that's when you don't talk. You talk around it, you go, there's a nice ulti there from Djokovic. And we'll see if it can happen in the next set. 1-0. Oh, sorry. Wow. 1-love. No. 1-love?
15 love. 15 love.
Well, I mean,
one love.
It's a game.
There's pride. 1 loves for the time we cried.
1-0.
Loves.
Yeah.
Gotta stay alive.
Oh, God. It's sad because, I mean, I played 10 years of tennis, and the fact that I got that wrong, instead of saying 1-0, 15 love, like...
we'll pretend it's late at night there, mate.
Yeah. Well, it is early in the morning. Hey, okay, so viewer questions to round this out. Because I noticed we do have a couple of casters in here who put out a tweet recently. There is a league that's looking to add an English broadcast, which is very exciting. And being on the ground floor of that, and a couple of people who applied to that, who I know up and coming casters. Carrix is in here and he says, do you think it's harder to do the medic freak style of smart play-by-play? Nice compliment. For the lack of a better term in aggro regions like LPL, due to the very real possibility of crowding out your color.
I understand the risk there. I don't think that you. So I think there's a couple of different things. Like, firstly, online is always harder to do the smart play-by-play because it's much more turn-based in casting online. Like, I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn, and play-by-play's turn is generally defined as team fights, right? So you want to give your color more space outside of that. I do think, though, smart play-by-play, again, in inverted commas, doesn't have to be as strict as I am going to be a mini color, right? A smart play-by-play can be adding little bits inside a team fight. It can be, I had a moment I was really proud of in the Fnatic game on Saturday where they just lost a fight. They were trying to fight against a Baron. The enemy team was doing Baron, and I saw Upset going down to blue buff on a Aphelios. And I was like, why on earth is Upset going down to blue buff? Why isn't he pressuring around the Baron? And I realized he was changing his guns. And so in the middle of a team fight, I'm just like, Upset needs to change his guns, da-da-da. And that's smart play-by-play, right? Yeah. It's something that you wouldn't always notice in the moment that still adds that little bit of extra intrigue and knowledge. So I do think if there's a lot of action, there's a risk that if you try too hard to be smart, you can crowd out your color caster. But I never think smart, again in inverted commas, play-by-play should be trying to be smart. It's purely an addition. It's purely a color caster said something cool, let me add a little bit on there, or here's something I can lead my color caster into by giving a bit of knowledge that I have.
I also think if you're on a different league like LPL or let's say VCS, a bloody league, then you're going to be adaptable. We as entertainers are adaptable. 100%. So
I mean, I know I wouldn't be saying as much outside of team fights if I was in LPL because I want to make sure I do my team fights well, and there's so fucking many of them.
And then there's
a
replay, and then in the replay there's another team fight, and then you go replay back to back. Like, dude, it's all play-by-play over here. Nice question though. So Scythian asks, or Scythian, excuse me for butchering that. If you had to move away from casting League, what would you want to cast instead?
Oh God, would I want to cast anything if I didn't cast League? I mean, it's a question I've asked myself a few times because as a freelancer, it's like I can do other things, but League is the game that I actually really enjoy casting. I'd probably move into something else. And something I'm debating with myself right now is what would that be? I haven't found anything that grabbed me the same way that being a doctor or casting grabbed me, so I'm on that journey of discovery, I guess, for my next midlife crisis. I had one at 25. No. Now we're looking for another one at 30 odd. But...
God, I'm about to say, if you have a midlife crisis at 25, that's not good. I mean, if you're a 50-year-old man who dies, like, God.
I mean, I've cast things like Trackmania, and that was a lot of fun, but it's just not as sustainable as casting League.
I didn't know you actually casted that game.
Yeah, I did their World Cup last year, man.
Oh wow. I
called it Trackmaster Grand League for a while. It's actually Trackmania, and
Good man. Thank you for that. I mean, I'm top 500 New South Wales, which is my state in some tracks, and I realize I'm probably top 500 out of 600 playing.
Oh mate, no, you fucking take those.
I have to. I've got nothing else. If there's a game that incorporates, anything with doctor knowledge and you can cast it, maybe that's your next game, I will say.
I mean, maybe that's my niche, right? Like, I just need to find something where you break children's bones and then put them back together, and it's an esport.
Well, it had to be children.
Have you never heard the story? Have you heard the story, Hysterics?
No, I have not.
I was casting with Foxdrop once, and he was like, "Oh, so tell me one of your favorite things in medicine." I was like, "Oh, mate, so what we used to do, and something that's really cool, is you would." If a child was too short, you break their bones." And then he just interrupted me. And he was like, "Oh, wait, medic, what are you talking about? Just breaking children's bones? How can you enjoy that? Fucking crazy." And obviously, you break their bone and then you move it apart so they grow and they get taller, right? And it's really cool because it's forced injury to create health.
Yeah.
But he never let me go into that part. So I was just known as the guy that wanted to break children's bones for a while on the LEC. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
good time to interrupt. Doesn't let you finish and actually elaborate. Uh, do you sorry, next question coming through. Thank you, Siphon. This is from Amber Media. Do you see yourself being the next quick shot and being grandpa of the EU League Championship? You got a lot of subs in here, ready to get the nitty gritty out of you.
Do I see myself being the next quick shot? I don't know, because I don't think quick shot's going anywhere, right? Like I also don't think I fit into the mold of the old esports dude, because I wasn't like young esports wasn't really a thing for me, and young gaming wasn't really a thing for me. I played like football games, and that was it. And so I don't have that depth of knowledge that Quickshot has about like Final Fantasies and all this cool stuff from when he was younger. I think I'm just kind of the dude. I don't like, what is my brand? I'm a dude that like had a life that decided to leave it to become a caster. Yeah. Okay, well now I'm in an existential crisis about what my fucking brand is. So thanks for that,
No.
Amber. It's great.
Oh,
Like,
nice.
just
Good.
the
Thank you.
dude that shouts good, you know?
Oh god. Um, if you stay around long
Yeah.
enough, I mean, you cement yourself even deeper into the league. So
Yeah.
simple way
That
to
is an
look at it.
issue. As a freelancer, like when everything is LEC, it's like no one wants to hire you because you're just the LEC dude. It's like,
Sure.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, uh, another crisis. You've had your midlife crisis at 25. Now
Mhm.
at 28, 27,
30.
30.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'm old,
maybe you
man.
are the grandpa of the EU League. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm almost 27. I'm feeling pretty cocky down here. Next question before you hang up. The lack of audience in the studio, how does it impact your casting? We talked about this a little bit before. If you can just reiterate, how much can create hype? Because lack of
Oh,
audience
like
in the
so,
studio is probably a bit devastating.
yeah, it sucks. Obviously, like bigger crowds are what I really thrive on, but having any sort of audience is amazing. And using jokes and playing off the audience and like having laughter and just that feeling of atmosphere is entirely different without fans and without players there as well. It really fucking sucks. I miss fans so much, and I hope they come back soon because League is not the same without fans in the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, again, we talked about it before. Audience is amazing, brings you up. Um,
Yeah.
and look, final question. I'll ask this from Squally. What do you see as the biggest challenge of our time, and what would you like to see happen to fix it? That's a
Fuck is this,
that's a
Squally?
philosophical question. What is the biggest
Fuck
challenge
is
of our
this
time, apart
question?
from the pandemic that has stunted 3 years of our lives? I mean, like, is
Yeah,
that the
but there's
answer?
like the pandemic, there's climate change, there's like, I mean, I have no plans on having children. I wanted to have children when I was younger, but I have no plans on having children anymore just because I couldn't bring them into this world, right? Everything's on fire. Corporate greed seems to be taking
Yeah.
over, and like nothing's gonna get better. I don't know. That's probably the biggest problem of our time. Climate change,
Hope
probably.
hope all these
That's
things.
a fucking sad way to end us as well.
It's
So
we're not. That's
sad.
not the last anymore.
Dear
There's someone who
God.
asked about creating peace in the Middle East. Like, I'm gonna move away from that. Like, Jesus.
I mean, yeah,
I'm
holy
gonna
fuck.
I'm gonna build up on something else Amber said, but I'm gonna add my own little question to it as well. Because she said any more world records coming up, and I'm gonna ask you, like, you've got Hades stuck there, right? I mean, you hit a world record there.
I had 2 world records in Hades,
Two
actually.
world records.
If we're gonna
Okay.
brag. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't really fit that into the title in that little box you've got there, but
Yeah.
it's implied. And Trackmania, I haven't been tracking your world records. I've been tuning in every now and then and just watching you.
I don't have any. Well, I did have 1 world record in Trackmania, but I lost it. But I'm not like that was a fluke rather than anything else. It was pure luck.
It still happened.
Yep.
It still happened. Is there any other game you're looking at, or is there like, I don't know, because you've already set world records in a couple of games, and now I'm just curious as to what comes next.
I know. Like I need a game I really wanted to set something in. You know, like the reason I did Hades was because I really enjoyed the game.
Yeah.
And then I found like this guide to it. I think Lost Ark is my next adventure, and we'll see how things go there. I'll probably try and do some PvP stuff with Betty. But at the moment, my goal is Masters in League. If I can get Masters in League, I'll be a very happy man. I've never hit it before, so I'm currently at D174 LP, I think.
Right.
D1, yeah, D1 74 LP with a 68% Rakan win rate.
Okay.
I'm a god gamer. D1, not D4. D1 74 LP, not D4
Wow.
70. Yeah.
You're
It's a slight difference.
You're at the point where I think you're one of the highest ranked play-by-plays in the world, right?
Yeah, I think Trayton is higher than me.
Right.
But, he's a French play-by-play.
So, and then there's Freak is Freak Master, or is he still Diamond?
I don't think Freak plays solo queue anymore. So I think he was like D1 Masters, but I don't think he is anything now.
And I'm trying to think of anyone else. I think Munchables is like gold, like me. Yeah. And that's about it. So you're high ranked, you got high respect. To finish this off, thank you again, because this has been.
I appreciate being here, man.
No. I mean, I appreciate having you here. Going through, I think like your insight into play-by-play has been very different and a really good perspective for growing casters to look at. Any plugs, anything coming up for you? Like what's next on the horizon? Whether it's casting, whether it's streaming, like anything at all.
Have you heard of this little thing called the LEC? I cast it every week.
You're gonna be on that?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there this weekend. Me and Cadril are gonna be casting last 2, I think, on Friday, and last 3 on Saturday. Apart from that, nothing major. I stream on twitch.tv/mediccasts if you want to give it a view.
Yeah.
And then that's my Twitter and everything as well. But I'm just enjoying living life, enjoying being here. Oh, I'm bowling now. That's my next thing. I want to get an above 200 bowling average.
Okay.
That's my next goal.
That's a random right turn. I feel like
but also it's like I'm a middle-aged man now, so bowling's the thing I'm meant to do.
Have you tried ice skating? Speaking of outdoor sports,
I would love to ice skate, but I tore the meniscus in my knee when I was 24 and had to have surgery, so I don't think I can go ice skating again.
My partner's into it, and so now it's weird because in Australia, right, like we're in the middle of summer. It's kind of rainy the past couple of days, but it's been hot. And so you don't think of ice skating in Australia as like a possible
big
sport.
last time, yeah.
There's 3 in Sydney. I just happen to be near one.
Oh wow, yeah.
So
very nice.
Yeah, so I don't know. That and a couple of other things.
Like rugby, hockey, like ice hockey. Those are like, I'd love to get back into those sports. They were so much fun.
Oh, so you can skate. You can actually skate.
Yeah, just about.
Just about. Well, if you played ice hockey, I think
but it was like, I was young and I was a big lad, so I could smack into people pretty effectively. Those guys they bring on just to punch people? Like that was kind of my style.
Oh, good. Well, nice. Yeah, you're a doctor now, so you can get back into it. If you hurt anyone,
exactly right.
Treat him right back up. Medic, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the casting chamber. For everyone, this will be available on YouTube. The VOD will be available on Twitch as well. And I'll throw it up on Twitter too. Medic, I hope if there's, you said before about kids, I hope COVID doesn't stop you, or I hope that doesn't dismay you. Dismay.
I mean, COVID isn't the reason I wouldn't have kids. I just think like bringing a child into the world right now is I can't face the world. How can a child face this fucking world? So
there you go.
Not saying that you shouldn't have kids, just saying it's a personal choice.
I just thought we'd end on something philosophical. Medic, thank you again. And folks, I'm going to end it here.
What would you fix if you could fix anything, Hysterics?
I don't know. World hunger. Okay. COVID, world hunger. I don't know. Something political with Trump. I don't know. Yeah, you thought I was going to go down a different route. He never gets to talk again. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, thank you, Medic. I'm going to put it to the screen before I get discontinued. Appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Bye.